welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. Marcus's space station drifted alone in the void, a faint speck of light amid the endless darkness of the universe, where the distant stars' feeble glimmers did little to pierce the bone-chilling cold of humanity's frontier edge. Out here, far from bustling planets and crowded trade routes, space seemed frozen in a deadly stillness, broken only by the low, steady hum of aging machinery echoing through the station's icy metal corridors. That night, Marcus slumped over his workbench, hair matted with sweat and plastered to his forehead, his grease-stained hands still clutching a wrench streaked with oil. Black smudges coated his cracked fingernails, the residue of hours spent tinkering with rusted engines and flickering circuits, a monotonous grind that had become the rhythm of his solitary life on this isolated outpost. Then, like a blade slicing through the night, a shrill screech tore through the silence, sharp, ferocious, like metal ripped apart by some colossal force. The sound stabbed through the quiet, reverberating off the steel walls, jolting Marcus upright. The wrench clattered to the floor with a sharp clack. A pulsing red glow erupted from the old control panel, its dim bulbs buzzing and flickering as if about to shatter, casting jagged crimson streaks across his face, turning him into a ghostly figure in the dark. He rubbed his eyes with an oil-smeared hand, muttering, "What the hell now?" His voice rasped, rough and unsteady in the stifling air. His worn boots, soles scraped thin, thudded against the cold metal floor as he shuffled over, each step sending a shiver up his spine, a gut-twisting premonition clawing at his chest. The screen flickered wildly, displaying a distress signal not human. The frequency danced erratically, pulsing like the heartbeat of someone thrashing in the jaws of death, the ship's ID a garbled string of meaningless symbols, warped beyond recognition, untraceable in any Space Alliance database. Marcus's heart pounded, each beat a drumroll of urgency, not from excitement, but from a creeping dread that slithered through his veins like ice. In this dead zone, unknown ships were never good news. They could be pirates with wicked grins and sharper knives, smugglers lurking in the shadows with forbidden cargo, or worse, predators from the galaxy's dark corners, where light drowned and only the roar of destruction remained. He touched the screen, fingers trembling as he zoomed in, numbers and glyphs swirling before his eyes like a spectral dance. The signal came from Black Hole K-47, a terrifying abyss where hundreds of ships had vanished without a trace, a place old spacers whispered about, tales of cosmic phantoms and ancient entities that devoured anything foolish enough to draw near. Marcus swallowed hard, his throat dry, the sound loud in the oppressive silence. "Ignore it," he told himself, voice cracking as if trying to convince a ghost. Station protocol was etched into his mind like a warning carved in stone. Do not engage unidentified vessels. If trouble came, no one would risk their neck crossing this desolate stretch to save him. He'd just be another flicker snuffed out in the dark, forgotten. But then his eyes caught the flashing red text. "Weak life signal detected." The words stabbed into his brain, stirring something deep in echo, faint and fragile, rising through the storm of his thoughts. Someone needs me. His heart slammed harder, threatening to crack his ribs, blood surging hot through his veins. He gritted his teeth, snatching his heavy toolkit, metal clanking like a death knell. "Guess I'm really losing it," he muttered, voice shaky but resolute. He bolted toward the docking bay, boots pounding the floor like war drums, breath steaming in the frigid air, dissolving like the last threads of hope. Through the observation window, a strange ship came into view, not a machine, but a living thing, staggering like a wounded beast in its final throes. Its hull shimmered with streaks of red-orange flame, tiny fires licking the surface like blood seeping from gashes. Deep, jagged tears ran along its side, as if clawed by some monstrous force, exposing glowing green conduits pulsing faintly like dying veins. Black smoke spewed from its auxiliary engines, thick and inky as a deep-sea creature's blood, the ship trembling with a low, guttural roar, a primal scream trapped within its frame. Marcus froze, eyes locked on the sight, his hand clenching until his knuckles whitened, nails digging into his palm. The station's AI chimed in, its voice cold and flat, cutting through his racing thoughts. "Emergency docking protocol activated. Prepare for contact." The ship crashed onto the bay floor, metal screeching against metal in a long, piercing wail like a creature's last breath, the sound bouncing off the enclosed walls and raising the hairs on Marcus's neck. He gripped his fists tighter, breath hitching, heart hammering. This wasn't like any ship he'd seen, not the clunky, utilitarian hulks of humanity with their boxy lines and dull gray hulls, but sleek and radiant, a living gem. Its silver exterior gleamed under the station's dim lights, as if forged from the glow of dead stars. The hatch popped open with a small explosion, white smoke billowing out, thick with the acrid stench of molten metal and something sharper, fouler like alien blood. Marcus held his breath, eyes fixed on the dark abyss ahead, heart racing like a war drum, each beat a warning. From the haze, a tall figure emerged, staggering yet commanding, like a warrior forged in a blood-soaked crucible. Cracked armor clung to their frame, jagged edges glinting like shattered crystal, revealing glimpses of an otherworldly form beneath. Silver skin shimmered faintly under the weak light, not cold metal, but alive, smooth as silk, woven from starlight. Piercing blue eyes glowed softly, sharp as crystal blades, slicing through him with an invisible weight that rooted him in place, prey under a predator's gaze. She unmistakably female stumbled, clutching the ship's edge, her long fingers trembling violently. Pale blue blood oozed from her armor's cracks, dripping onto the floor, hissing and smoking as it corroded the metal, leaving charred black stains. Marcus stood frozen, breath caught, but instinct kicked in. He lunged forward, boots slamming the floor, drowning out the ship's dying wails. "Hey, you okay?" he shouted, voice breaking in the thick air, a mix of panic and awe. Her eyes swept over him, a cold fire flaring in her pupils, silence stretching like a threat, the air heavy enough to choke. Then she spoke, voice rough but steady, resonating from some deep abyss. "You are human." Marcus nodded, forcing calm despite his racing pulse, sweat beating cold on his neck. "Yeah, and you're in bad shape. Let me help." She hesitated, her gaze probing him like he might be a foe, then dipped her head slightly, voice low and deliberate. "I accept." Marcus steadied her as they crossed into the repair shop, his legs trembling under her weight, not just her physical mass, but an unseen force radiating from her presence. She towered over him by 3 feet, her frame lean yet solid, as if sculpted from something beyond human understanding. Even injured, raw power simmered in her slow, deliberate movements, muscles flexing beneath her fractured armor. Her silver skin glinted under the shop's weak yellow lights, smooth as silk yet icy to the touch, not quite flesh, but alive in a way that defied logic. Her armor hugged her body, now marred with cracks, revealing not rigid metal but a bioorganic layer, pliable, resilient, tougher than anything human blades could pierce. Pale blue blood seeped from the gaps, dripping to the floor, hissing as it ate into the metal, leaving blackened scars and a sharp, metallic tang in the air. Her breaths came heavy, each one a rasping wheeze, like wind whistling through a broken machine on its last legs. Yet she held herself upright, shoulders square, chin high, a warrior unbowed, teetering on collapse but refusing to yield. Marcus dragged over an old metal chair, its legs scraping the floor with a grating squeal that echoed in the quiet room. "Sit," he said, voice wavering, masking the unease churning in his chest. She fixed him with those blazing blue eyes, twin shards of frozen fire, then lowered herself with measured precision, a machine executing a flawless command. Seated, her gaze swept the room, the rusted tools piled in the corner, the cluttered workbench strewn with scorched parts, the dangling wires spitting faint sparks. She was alert, every muscle taut, ready to spring up and draw a weapon, though her trembling hands clung to the chair's edge. He grabbed a dusty medkit from the corner, popping it open with a dry click. The contents, gauze, antiseptic, looked pitiful next to her condition. "I'm no expert on alien medicine," he said, a wry edge to his tone. "But let me check your wounds. Gotta do something." Her hand shot up, swift as a blade, silver palm halting inches from his face. "No need," she said, voice cold as ice, unshaken. "My body regenerates." Marcus raised an eyebrow, glancing at the blue blood pooling beneath her, still sizzling as it gnawed at the floor. "You sure?" he pressed, skepticism creeping in. You look like a monster chewed you up and spat you out. Her eyes narrowed, a sharp glint flashing like a drawn knife, a flicker of menace that made him step back. I will recover, she said, voice dropping low. It takes time. He nodded reluctantly, setting the medkit down with a dull clang. Fine, your call, he muttered, rubbing his neck, trying to shake off the strange weight pressing on his chest. Silence fell, thick and heavy, blanketing the room. Marcus leaned against the workbench, arms crossed, studying her. So, what's your name? He asked, softening his tone to chip at the icy wall between them. She hesitated, her blue eyes flickering, as if naming herself was a gamble with life or death. Lira, she said, voice low but clear, ringing like a bell from a deep chasm. Lira, huh? Marcus echoed, a faint grin tugging his lips. I'm Marcus. She gave a slight nod, barely perceptible, then went still, her face a mask. He tilted his head, searching for a crack in her stoic shell, but found only stone. So what happened to your ship? He asked, voice dipping, more serious now. It's wrecked like it flew through an asteroid storm or worse. Lyra's jaw tightened, her eyes darkening like a storm brewing, shadows swirling in her blue depths. I was ambushed, she said, voice cutting the air like a blade. Cosmic hunters, not petty thieves, but predators who stalk living trophies. They struck before I could cloak. Marcus shivered, a chill racing down his spine, like an unseen hand gripping his throat. Hunters? He repeated, voice faltering. You mean they were after you? Yes, she said, voice hard as forged steel, unflinching. My blood, my armor, my ship, all trophies for their kill. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple, cold sweat beading on his neck. If those hunters tracked her here, his little station with its outdated cannons and paper-thin shields would be ash in seconds. Well, you're safe now, he said, forcing calm. This place is buried in cosmic dust. Hard to find. Lira turned to him, her gaze unreadable, a bottomless abyss. You aid me without knowing who I am, she said, voice low, a rare curiosity threading through it. Marcus shrugged, chuckling dryly. Yeah, someone needs help, I help. Simple as that. She tilted her head, studying him as if his words were a puzzle from another world. Your kind demands nothing? She asked, eyes piercing, sharp enough to cut through him. He grinned faintly, scratching his neck. Some cosmic credits be nice, but nah, I don't do it for a reward. Her eyes flared, locking onto him, probing as if peeling back his soul for hidden motives. You are strange, she murmured, a mix of wonder and doubt in her tone, like he was a riddle she couldn't crack. Silence settled again, heavy with the promise of a storm. Marcus clapped his hands, the sharp slap shattering the stillness. All right, let's talk about your ship, he said, voice firm. If you want to get out of here, I need to fix it. Lira straightened, her posture rigid like a soldier marching to war, eyes cold but resolute. Can you do it? She asked, voice low, a challenge. I'll try, he replied, smirking, but as he turned to grab his tools, a strange instinct stirred cold, deep, whispering that he just stepped into a game far beyond his grasp, where every move was a roll of the dice with death. Marcus stood frozen before Lyra's ship, hands on his hips, eyes locked on the deep gashes scarring its hull like mortal wounds on some giant beast. The workshop's dim lights cast a faint glow over the ship, its silver surface shimmering with an eerie, star-like sheen, beautiful, yet cold as death itself. Up close, the damage was stark. Bioorganic conduits, not lifeless wires, but living veins lay exposed, flickering with faint green light, fragile as a dying man's breath. Glowing fluid seeped from the cracks, dripping onto the metal floor with a sizzling hiss, corroding it into blackened patches. The air thickened with a sharp, fishy tang mixed with the acrid bite of molten metal. The ship shuddered, not a mechanical jolt, but a slow, weak pulse, like a heart on its last beat, each thrum a low hum echoing through the silent bay. He let out a long whistle, the sound bouncing oddly in the frigid space. Well, damn, this thing nearly got torn to shreds, he said, voice laced with awe and a flicker of excitement. Lira stood beside him, arms crossed, her posture rigid as a statue, blue eyes icy and fixed on the ship. "Can you fix it?" she asked, her tone low and cutting, not a question, but a demand. Marcus scratched the back of his neck, oil-stained fingers leaving a smudge, muttering, "I'll try, but this ain't like human ships." He shrugged, gaze tracing the ship's sleek curves. "Our tech's bolts and circuits simple, rough. This? It's alive." Lira stepped forward, her long fingers brushing a tear in the hull, gentle yet precise, like stroking a familiar creature. "Because it is," she said, voice flat but heavy with undeniable truth. "My ship is biomechanical, a fusion of machine and life. It adapts, heals itself, and bonds with its pilot through consciousness." Marcus's eyes widened, and he crouched beside the ship, touching its icy surface. It wasn't hard metal but soft, almost like skin, no, more like the hide of some deep-sea monster, smooth yet tough, trembling faintly under his fingertips like a shallow breath. "You mean it's actually alive?" he asked, voice cracking with a mix of shock and doubt. "Not as you'd understand it," Lira replied, her gaze still on the ship, unwavering. "It doesn't think or feel, but it grows if conditions allow. The energy core is its heart, its life, its will, everything." Marcus frowned, standing up, wiping sweat from his brow despite the chill seeping into his bones. "So why isn't it fixing itself?" he pressed, voice low, probing. Lyra's brow furrowed, a shadow crossing her blue eyes like a storm brewing. "The core's damaged," she said, voice dropping to a near whisper. "Without it, the ship can't regenerate." Marcus sighed, hands back on his hips, muttering, "Great, I've got to fix something way beyond human tech." He smirked, a half-mocking, half-defiant grin. "Good thing I love a challenge." A spark flashed in Lyra's eyes, brief, almost imperceptible, maybe respect, maybe just curiosity at his stubborn grit. "I'll guide you," she said, voice firm, a promise sealed in steel. The next hours blurred into a surreal trek, like stepping into a dream Marcus wasn't sure he'd wake from. Lira stood close, explaining the ship's systems, but her words were a cascade of alien terms, echoing like chants from an ancient civilization. Biocircuits, symbiotic energy flow, consciousness frequency. Each phrase opened a door to a world he couldn't fully grasp, but he listened, memorized, clutching his wrench and voltage tester, scrambling to keep up. The ship didn't run on human power, no copper wires, no batteries, no fusion reactors. Instead, it drew from the energy core, a pulsing orb like a living heart, tucked deep in the central bay. Marcus found it after crawling through tight, dark passages, the air thick with the fishy stench of biofluids, the low hum rumbling like a sleeping beast's breath. There it was, cradled in a web of delicate conduits, glowing a faint green but shattered. A long crack split its surface, leaking luminous fluid that hissed on the floor, wisps of white smoke curling up. He touched it, fingers buzzing with a strange jolt, hairs on his neck standing on end. "This thing's dangerous, right?" he muttered, voice tight, staring at it like a ticking bomb. Lira nodded, her shadow looming over him. "If it dies completely, the ship stops responding," she said, voice low. "I'd lose my link to it, lose everything." Marcus swallowed hard, sweat beading on his forehead. "Then we fix it fast," he said, gripping his wrench, resolve mingling with dread. Lira hesitated, her eyes flickering, the first crack in her icy mask since they'd met. "There's a way," she said softly, like confessing a forbidden truth. "But my people would never do it." Marcus turned, brow raised. "What do you mean?" "The Clyron, my kind, only allows specialized engineers, trained from birth, to touch the core," she explained, voice cold but tinged with bitterness. "But you're human. You think differently." Marcus grinned, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Yeah, we love breaking rules," he said, voice light but brimming with confidence. Hours ticked by in a string of failures. He tried welding, nothing. Fed it reserve power from the station, no response. Jumped it with the generator, just a piercing screech and the stink of burning circuits. The core rejected every attempt, as if scoffing at human ingenuity. Marcus slumped to the floor, drenched in sweat, hands trembling around his wrench, mind spinning. "This ain't working," he muttered, despair creeping in. Then, in a flash of madness, he leapt up, sprinting to the station's main generator, the heart keeping it alive, and yanked out a power cell, sparks flying as he tore it free. Lira shouted, voice sharp, "What are you doing?" But before she could stop him, Marcus wired the cell to the core. A high-pitched whine erupted, the core trembling, green light flaring as it tasted the alien energy. Slowly it stabilized, pulsing stronger. A soft hum filled the air, the hull's gaseous ceiling as biofluid flowed like blood, knitting the wounds shut. Lira stood stunned, eyes wide, statue still. "You did it," she whispered, voice thick with disbelief and awe. Marcus wiped his brow, laughing hoarsely. "Guess your folks never thought to mix tech like this, huh?" She shook her head, gaze fixed on him. "Never," she said, voice low. "The Clyron would call it blasphemy. But you, humans don't cling to old rules." He shrugged, smirking. "We make our own." Lyra's stare shifted, not cold suspicion now, but a deep spark, like she'd glimpsed something beyond her comprehension. Marcus hunched over the control panel of Lyra's ship, fingers darting across unfamiliar buttons, eyes glued to the navigation screen flickering with pale blue light. The air in the bay hung heavy, stifling, thick with the fishy reek of biofluids and the sharp sting of molten metal from earlier repairs. He muttered to himself, voice rough, "Come on, don't flake out now, I just fixed you." The ship quivered faintly, as if answering, the core's pulse throbbing in his ears like a giant's slow heartbeat. Lira stood behind him, silent, her piercing blue eyes scanning every detail, hand resting lightly on the chair's edge, her body taut as a bowstring ready to snap. Then, without warning, a massive explosion roared through the station, violent, piercing, like a hammer smashing the quiet to bits. The floor bucked wildly, hurling Marcus to the ground, his knees cracking against metal with a sharp thud. Tools scattered everywhere, wrenches, screwdrivers, scorched parts clattering in a chaotic symphony. "What the hell?" he yelled, voice breaking, scrambling up as adrenaline surged hot through his veins. Lira sprang up instantly, movements swift as a blade, drawing an energy sword from a slot in her armor. The blade flared to life, humming low, its blue glow dancing like icy flames. "They've found me," she growled, eyes blazing not with fear, but a fierce, primal fire igniting from within. Marcus lunged for the station's main console, hands shaking as he slammed the screen, oil-streaked fingers smearing black streaks. The display flared up 3 small ships, black as shadows, streaking from Black Hole K-47. Their hulls bristled with jagged spikes like a beast's teeth, glinting faintly in the cosmic dust, predators charging at lethal speed. "Who?" he demanded, heart pounding, each beat threatening to crack his ribs, sweat chilling his neck. "The hunters," Lira said, voice sharp as her blade, eyes locked on the screen. "They won't stop until they have my head in this ship." Marcus swallowed hard, throat parched, the sound loud amid the station's trembling hum. "Perfect," he muttered, sarcasm dripping. "Just fixed it, and now uninvited guests." He smashed the defense activation button, trembling fingers making it click erratically. The screen blinked, showing stats for a few rusty laser cannons weak, barely good for chasing off scavengers, and a flimsy energy shield, flickering like it might die any second. "This station can't hold!" he shouted, voice cracking, panic flashing in his eyes as he glanced at Lira. She turned, her blue gaze cold but steady. "My ship has weapons," she said, urgent yet eerily calm. "But the combat core needs time to boot up." Before he could reply, a red laser tore through space, a blazing inferno that slammed the shield. The impact boomed, shaking the floor, the shield sparking then fading, green flickers dancing like a web about to tear. Marcus stumbled again, gripping the table, yelling, "Show me how to start it, now!" Lira raced after him to the ship's control bay, her long legs moving like a gale, sword still glowing in her grip. "The core needs my consciousness," she said, voice tight, a rare edge of panic seeping through. "But I'm too weak after the last fight." Marcus spun, eyes hard, no hesitation. "Use me," he said, voice low, solid as rock. Lira froze, eyes widening, blue light flaring with shock. "You're insane!" she snapped, grip tightening on her sword. No other choice, he roared, stepping forward, slamming his hand onto the core, its glow painting his face in strange streaks. Lira gritted her teeth, eyes wavering, then pressed his hand to the core, her icy palm chilling his skin. A surge ripped through Marcus, not mere electricity, but a living force, savage and raw, tearing through muscle and bone. He screamed, pain like being ripped apart, but then he felt that the ship's pulse, slow and strong, merging with his mind in a chaotic symphony. The ship shuddered violently, its hum swelling into a roar, two massive plasma cannons rising from its hull, glowing purple-red, each barrel twice his height, thrumming with power. Marcus clenched his jaw, sweat streaming, vision blurring, but he focused, commanding it with thought, a bizarre fusion, man and machine as one. He fired in his mind, twin plasma beams erupting, blinding as suns, ripping space with a shrill screech. One enemy ship exploded instantly, black metal shards raining down, blazing in the void. Marcus gasped, a grim smirk flickering, but it faded as the other two dodged, swift as phantoms, their spiked noses aiming for the docking bay. A distant blast echoed, white smoke pouring from the station's torn hull, air hissing out into space. Lira turned, sword blazing, voice low. They're inside. Marcus clenched his fists, heart racing, muttering, "Damn it, now the fun really starts." The bay door blew apart with a deafening roar, like the sky splitting under thunder, white smoke billowing thickly, hurling jagged metal shards everywhere. Clangs rang out in the tight space as red-hot steel slammed walls and floor, leaving scorched trails. Marcus crashed backward, spine hitting the table's edge, breath knocked out. "Damn it!" he yelled, groping for a hold in the chaos. 5 towering figures emerged from the haze, their heavy steps thudding like a death march. Not human, cyborg hybrids, over 2 meters tall, clad in glossy black armor that shimmered like oil slicks under the dim lights. Beastly masks hid their faces, red slits glowing like monster eyes, their energy weapons gleaming, blades humming low like a starving predator's growl. Lira charged, a blur of motion, her energy sword blazing blue, shrieking as it slashed horizontally. It cleaved the first rack in half, its body cracking, black ichor spraying like oil, armor shattering to the floor with a crash. Marcus scrambled up, snatching an old rifle from the wall, paint peeling to bare rusted steel. He fired wildly, shots barking dryly, bullets trailing faint smoke, but they only scratched the Thrax armor, sparks fizzling out, dropping uselessly like dust. "They're Thrak!" Lira shouted mid-fight, voice booming over their snarls, eyes burning like icy flames. "The galaxy's cruelest hunters, no mercy, no end!" One Thrak leapt, fast as a shadow, its gleaming claws slashing at Marcus. He barely yelled before agony exploded, claws ripping his left shoulder, slicing flesh and bone like paper. Hot blood gushed, soaking the cold floor red, and he collapsed, knees cracking, clutching his arm with ragged gasps and groans. "Bastard!" he roared, vision blurring, blood seeping through his fingers, dripping into the black burns left by biofluids. Lira spun, a lethal dance, her sword arcing perfectly. The Thrak's head flew, black blood splattering, its body crumpling like a dead machine, metal clanking loud in the shop. She darted over, yanking Marcus behind the workbench, her grip icy yet firm on his arm. "You can't fight them!" she snarled, voice sharp, blue eyes flashing anger and worry. Marcus panted, clutching his shoulder, blood hot and sticky between his fingers. "You're not much better off," he shot back, hoarse, fighting pain to sound tough. Lyra's gaze wavered, no longer unyielding, a flicker of doubt, like she weighed something beyond her limits. "I have a way," she said, voice low, pulling a small device from her armor, a silver orb, coin-sized, humming with latent power. "But you must trust me." Marcus sucked in air, eyes on the device, heart pounding. "What way?" he rasped, sweat and blood streaking his face. No answer waited. She pressed it to his neck, a soft click, then a searing energy erupted, coursing through him like fire in his veins. He screamed, agony like being burned alive, body convulsing, but his shoulder knit shut, not healing slowly, but instantly, flesh reforming at impossible speed, leaving a faint scar. He felt change stronger, faster, infused with alien vigor. Eyes wide, breath ragged, he flexed his fist, feeling steel in his bones. "What the hell was that?" he shouted, leaping up, voice a mix of shock and thrill. "Clyron tech," Lira said, cold but hurried, sword tight as she dove back into battle. "It unlocks your hidden potential, but it won't last." Power surged in Marcus, blood roaring, muscles like forged iron. He vaulted the table, swift as wind, smashing a fist into a Thrax mask. Metal shattered, blood sprayed, the creature staggering and dropping. "Hell yeah!" he yelled, grinning, but it faded as another lunged, its blade whining toward his throat. Lira intercepted, slashing it in two before it struck. Together, they fought a bloody symphony of clashing metal, Thrak roars, and sword shrieks. One by one, the hunters fell, black blood pooling, the air choking with smoke and rot. As the last Thrak crumpled, twitching then still, a distant boom shook the station. Marcus panted, hands on knees, blood and sweat dripping. Through the window, a colossal mothership loomed from Black Hole K-47 hundreds of times the station's size, black and spiked, a light-swallowing titan. Lira stood beside him, sword trembling faintly, rare terror breaking her cold mask. "They're not done," she whispered, voice quaking, eyes fixed on the approaching void. Marcus swallowed, muttering, "Knew it wasn't over yet." The station quaked violently, like a colossal beast thrashing in its death throes. Distant explosions rumbled, low and sharp, piercing the thin metal walls, the floor tilting as debris rained from the ceiling like dust in a storm. Marcus clung to the table's edge, boots slipping on a floor slick with black Thrak blood and his own red stains, breath heaving in white puffs against the freezing air. Through the viewport, the Thrak mothership's red glare flooded in, painting the bay a hellish hue, lasers slashing the station's frail shield with dry cracks, green sparks dancing like a fraying web about to snap. "We've gotta move!" he yelled, voice raw, seizing Lyra's arm and yanking her toward her ship's bay. His fingers dug into her cracked armor, feeling the chill of her silver skin, but she didn't budge. Lira stood rooted, still as stone, her deep blue eyes hollow, the fiery resolve he'd known snuffed out. The station's dim lights traced her sharp features, revealing a crack in her unshakable facade of fleeting fragility, like glass on the brink of shattering. "I can't run," she said softly, voice sinking to a near whisper, each word a self-inflicted wound. Marcus froze, hands still on her shoulders, eyes wide, heart pounding. "Why the hell not?" he shouted, voice breaking with fury and confusion. He shook her hard, desperate to snap her out of whatever nightmare held her. "We're out of time, don't you see that monster ship out there? It'll rip this place apart." But Lira turned slowly, her gaze locking onto his, and for the first time, he saw it tremble not with fear, but with a deep, jagged pain, like an old scar torn open. "I'm not a victim," she said, voice quivering, each syllable dragged from her core, heavy with bitter weight. "I'm the target. I'm a traitor to Clyron." Marcus stepped back, hands dropping, mind reeling like he'd been sucked into a vortex. "What?" he muttered, voice faint, staring at her like she was a stranger. The air thickened, suffocating, filled only with the station's low groan and the distant whine of lasers. Lira drew a sharp breath, fists clenching, nails biting into her silver palms as if to cage a secret clawing to escape. "I was a Clyron general," she said, voice dropping, cold yet laced with anguish. "One of their strongest, most revered. But I defied in order to slaughter an innocent planet, millions of lives, unarmed, defenseless. I couldn't do it." Marcus stood motionless, breath caught, sweat chilling on his brow despite the icy air. "So you," he started, but Lira cut in, eyes darkening like a sky before a tempest. "I stole this ship," she said, fingers brushing the hull, a tender caress over its silver skin like greeting an old friend. "It's not just a vessel, it's Clyron's secret weapon, built to annihilate fleets in an instant. I fled with it, turned traitor. Thrak was hired to hunt me, reclaim the ship, kill me not as prey, but as a threat." Her voice faded, crushed by the weight of her words, gaze drifting from him to a void beyond. He stepped back again, hands trembling as he rubbed his temples, mind a tangle of severed wires. So you lied to me from the start? He asked, voice low, threaded with doubt and hurt. Everything you said, everything I did fixing this, fighting was just you using me? Lyra's head snapped up, pain flashing in her eyes like a dying flame, lips pressed into a tight line. No, she said, voice rough, hand rising as if to touch him but halting midair. I never expected you'd help me this much. I didn't think a human, a stranger who knew nothing of me, would risk his life for me. I planned to leave once the ship was fixed, let you live in peace, but now… Another blast cut her off, shaking the bay, metal shards clattering from above, dust swirling thick. The Thrak mothership launched a colossal torpedo, blazing like a falling star, hurtling toward the station with lethal intent. Through the viewport, Marcus saw it, a black, spiked mass trailing red fire, slicing the cosmic dark. Damn it! He roared, heart slamming, blood surging hot. Without thinking, he grabbed her hand, dragging her to the pilot's seat, Clyron tech still fueling his veins, making his moves swift and sure. Whoever you are, he growled, voice low and unyielding as rock, I'm not letting you die here. Get in now! Lira faltered, eyes flickering between him and the ship, then nodded, gripping her energy sword tight, stepping to the controls with a new resolve not to flee, but to face it head on. Lyra's ship rocketed out of the docking bay at breakneck speed, its engines roaring like a wounded beast's dying scream, shaking so fiercely Marcus felt his bones might rattle loose. He gripped the controls, sweat pouring down his face like a river, dripping into his eyes and blurring his vision. Through the viewport, he caught a fleeting glimpse of the Thrak mothership's massive torpedo slamming into the station, a thunderous explosion, blinding as a sunburst, shredding the outpost into a blazing storm of debris. Red-hot metal spun through space like a meteor shower, the orange glow bathing his face through the glass, turning the cockpit into a hellish inferno. Damn it! He rasped, voice hoarse, wrenching the ship aside as a jagged chunk scraped the hull, screeching like nails on steel. Lira sat beside him, fingers flying over the secondary console, her silver hands moving with machine-like precision. Cloaking system! She barked, voice cutting through the engine's drone, slamming a glowing blue button. The ship shuddered, its silver hull fading into a ghostly shimmer, melting into space, but red streaks flared as dozens of Thrak fighters swarmed from behind, a hive of angry wasps. Crimson lasers tore through the void, thin but lethal, grazing the ship, sizzling against the bioarmor with a sharp hiss, the cockpit filling with the acrid stench of burning fluid. Marcus yanked the stick, the ship banking hard, dodging a beam by inches. You said this thing's a secret weapon? He shouted, voice cracking amid the blasts and laser whines, eyes locked on the NAV screen. Yes, Lira replied, voice low, her piercing blue eyes flicking to him before snapping back to the controls. It has a destruction core, enough power to wipe out a fleet in a heartbeat. But I swore never to use it. Marcus turned, sweat streaking his face, flashing a dry grin despite his hammering heart. So what now? He asked, weaving through a barrage of lasers, small explosions popping as they hit cosmic dust behind. Lira clenched her jaw, a faint grinding sound escaping her teeth, eyes darkening like a storm on the horizon. I'll break that oath, she said, voice heavy as a death sentence, her hand rising slowly to the core, a pulsing orb in the cockpit's heart, beating like a dormant creature. Her silver palm pressed against it, and a crimson energy erupted, spreading like hellfire. The ship jolted violently, its low hum swelling into a deafening roar, the floor bucking so hard Marcus clung to his seat to stay put. Heads up! He yelled, but his eyes stayed on the core, blood red, pulsing faster, wild, like a heart jolted awake. A shockwave blasted from the hull, invisible but devastating, ripping outward at terrifying speed. Through the viewport, Marcus watched the Thrak fighters get swallowed, exploding silently in the vacuum. Fireballs flaring red then fading, black metal shards scattering like dust, glinting briefly before vanishing into the dark. He panted, hands trembling on the controls, a grin flickering. Not bad, he muttered, voice rough, but it died as the Thrak mothership loomed ahead, unmoving, a colossal steel mountain in the void. A massive energy net shot from its belly, glowing blue tendrils weaving tight, snaring Lyra's ship before they could react. The craft lurched, hooked like a fish, dragged back toward the beast. "They want me alive," Lyra whispered, voice quaking, eyes fixed on the tightening net, the hull groaning under crushing strain. Marcus spun to her, eyes hard, unshaken. "Not while I'm here," he said, voice low and firm as stone, slamming the console to check systems. Ignoring her response, he bolted to the tech bay, boots slipping on scorched floors, breath puffing white in ragged bursts. In the corner, he found the last power cell, a small, glowing block of blue light, salvaged from the station's core, a keepsake from lonely days. "Sorry, old friend," he muttered, hands shaking as he yanked the connectors, sparks flaring. He hurled it into the core without a second thought, a faint click as it locked in. The orb blazed, red blending with blue, thrumming like a bomb about to blow. A surge erupted, fiercer than the shockwave, coursing through the ship like living flame. The thrack net cracked, its glowing strands shattering, blue light dissolving into the void. The ship jolted free, hurtling into deep space at insane speed. The engine's roar pounded Marcus's ears, the floor quaking, but he gripped the seat, sweat and dried blood caking his face. Through the viewport, the Thrak mothership shrank, a black titan amid cosmic dust, still but menacing. He gasped, hands shaking as they fell from the controls, muttering, "All right, we're out for real this time." Lyra sat beside him, eyes forward, clutching her dim sword, voice low. "Not yet." The ship drifted quietly among the stars, the engine's roar now a soft, steady hum, gentle as a giant beast's breath. Space stretched silent around them, a deep darkness cradling the craft, pierced only by distant starlight filtering through the viewport, casting faint, ghostly streaks across the cockpit. Marcus slumped in the pilot's seat, back pressed against it, panting hard, sweat and blood dried into gritty streaks on his face. His hands dangled from the controls, trembling from exhaustion, but a tired smirk tugged his lips. Lyra stood beside him, posture straight yet looser, her energy soared dark and still in her grip. Her blue eyes softened, rare warmth breaking through, sweeping over him, as if seeing something beyond her grasp. "You saved me again," she said, voice low, no longer cold but tinged with an odd gentleness. Marcus shrugged, wiping his brow with a torn sleeve. "No big deal," he rasped, smirking with that familiar self-mockery. Lyra tilted her head, a faint smile flickering brief as a shooting star softening her sharp features. "Your kind are strange," she murmured, eyes glinting with curiosity. "I've learned from you trust, freedom, things my people buried under rules." Marcus met her gaze, heart thudding faintly despite his effort to hide it. "So what's next?" he asked, voice soft but serious. She paused, eyes drifting to the stars, shimmering like a promise. "I want to go with you," she said, firm and sure. "Explore the universe, unbound by Clyron or Thrak." "Just us." Marcus nodded, grinning faintly. "Fine by me. But next time, warn me if you're a wanted fugitive, all right?" A calm settled, fragile but sweet, until a sharp beep pierced the silence from the console. A mysterious signal blinked on the screen, red as fresh blood. Marcus frowned, leaning in, muttering, "What now?" Lyra turned, softness vanishing, her face paling like a star eclipsed. "That's a Clyron signal," she whispered, voice trembling, hand tightening on her sword. "They know I'm alive, and they're coming." Marcus leaned back, laughing loud, the sound ringing in the cockpit, weary yet exhilarated. "Then gear up," he said, slapping the controls. "This ride's far from over." The ship surged forward, diving into the endless dark, where twinkling stars promised a journey of chaos and wonder ahead.